In 2011, a Belgian agronomist placed seed potatoes under a copper frame for 48 hours, just 2 days. Then he planted them next to untreated potatoes from the exact same batch, same soil, same water, same sunlight. The treated potatoes produced double the yield. Not 10% more, not 30% more, double. The copper frame had no wires, no batteries, no fertilizer attached. It was just copper pipe, bent into one very specific shape. That shape has a name, it has a history, and it has been quietly buried for almost a century. This is the story of the electric soil's secret, a forgotten science that turns a $15 copper pipe into something that collects energy from the sky, wakes up the biology in the ground, and feeds plants from 4 directions at once, without ever needing to be replaced. And the most surprising part? The science behind it started over 270 years ago. Part 1. The Forgotten Symphony of Atmospheric Electricity. Here is something most gardeners have felt but never had a name for. After a heavy summer thunderstorm, the garden looks different. The leaves stand a little straighter. The greens look deeper, richer. The air smells impossibly fresh. Everyone notices it. Almost nobody asks why. The answer goes back to 1749, when a French scientist named Abbé Nollet became one of the first researchers to document a startling connection. Electricity makes plants grow faster. That was not a fringe theory. It was the beginning of a field that would produce remarkable results for over 150 years. Here is the part that rarely gets mentioned. The Earth sits inside a massive natural electrical circuit. The ionosphere, the upper layer of the atmosphere, carries a positive charge of hundreds of thousands of volts relative to the ground. That voltage difference creates a constant, invisible electric field, pressing down through the air, every hour of every day, rain or shine. Plants have been growing inside that field since long before humans arrived. In the late 1800s, a Finnish physicist named Selim Lemstrom noticed something that puzzled him. Vegetation near the Arctic Circle grew with surprising speed and vigor, despite brutally short growing seasons and frozen soil. Logically, those plants should have been stunted. Instead, they were thriving. Lemstrom spent 17 years investigating. His conclusion? The answer was overhead. The intense atmospheric electrical activity near the poles, the same energy that lights up the aurora borealis, was supercharging plant growth from above. He tested the idea directly. He connected plant roots to the negative pole of an electrostatic generator, simulating the atmospheric charge. The numbers were hard to ignore. Cereal crops showed a 60% increase in dry weight. Carrots, 183%. By the 1920s, a French inventor named Justin Christofleau took this further. He built and patented practical devices designed to capture natural atmospheric and telluric currents and direct them into farmland. His system increased crop yields by up to 200%. No synthetic chemicals involved. It accelerated germination. It helped crops survive drought. It even appeared to prevent certain plant diseases. Before the Second World War, more than 150,000 of his devices had been sold around the world. And then, almost overnight, the whole field went quiet. What happened next is a pattern that anyone who has lived through the last 60 or 70 years will recognize immediately. When the war ended, the companies that had manufactured explosives and chemical agents needed new customers. Agriculture became that customer. The same industrial chemistry that had produced wartime poisons was repackaged as fertilizers and pesticides. One company, founded in 1901 to produce artificial sweeteners, went on to develop some of the most controversial chemical products in modern history. Insecticides, later banned for environmental damage, herbicides used in wartime, and eventually, genetically modified seeds designed to depend on proprietary chemicals. The free, permanent natural methods of electroculture did not fit into that business model. A copper device built once and never repurchased generates zero recurring revenue. Whether it was deliberate suppression or simply the economics of the marketplace, the result was the same. The science of electrical gardening was pushed to the margins and nearly forgotten.
But the story does not end
is
in the
not
drawer.
completely.
A slender female hand with light skin and paint.
Part 2. A razor blade, a cardboard box, and the magic of Giza. The next chapter of this story sounds like it belongs in a Cold War thriller, and in a way it does. In 1949, behind the Iron Curtain, a Czechoslovakian radio engineer named Karel Durbel walked into the patent office in Prague with an application that nobody took seriously. His invention was not electronic. It was not mechanical. It was a small, hollow model made of cardboard, shaped exactly like the Great Pyramid of Giza. According to his filing, this cardboard shape could maintain the sharpness of razor blades. No mechanical grinding, no chemical treatment, no electricity from the wall, just a specific geometric form oriented with its 4 flat sides facing the 4 cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. The blade rested inside on a small platform at exactly 1/3 of the pyramid's height. The patent examiners told him to leave. Durbel did not leave. He came back. Year after year, he spent a decade building the theoretical framework, arguing that the pyramid shape concentrated the Earth's magnetic field in a way that physically restored the crystalline edge of the blade. Eventually, the chief examiner, a metallurgical specialist, agreed to take a prototype home and test it himself. Here is what he found. Over the course of 10 years, he used just 16 razor blades to complete 1,778 shaves. That works out to roughly 111 shaves per blade. Without the pyramid, each blade lasted about 5. In 1959, patent number 91,304 was officially granted by the Czechoslovak Republic. Durbel was very careful to say he was not claiming magic. He was claiming something more precise, that specific geometric proportions interact with electromagnetic fields in measurable, repeatable ways. And there was one proportion that mattered above all others. The slope angle had to be exactly 51 degrees and 52 minutes. That is the exact angle of the original casing stones of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Now, here is where the story gets genuinely fascinating and where most people stop paying attention too soon. When a 4-sided pyramid is built to that precise slope, something remarkable happens mathematically. The perimeter of the base, divided by twice the height, equals pi, 3.14159. And the slant height of each face, divided by half the base length, equals phi, 1.618, the golden ratio. No other angle produces both constants simultaneously. No other three-dimensional shape on Earth encodes these two fundamental numbers at the same time. And phi, the golden ratio, is not an abstract curiosity. It is the single most common proportion in living biology. It governs the spiral of a nautilus shell, the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower, the branching of oak trees, the proportions of the human skeleton, even the double helix of DNA. A pyramid built to that angle speaks the same mathematical language as the plants growing beneath it. That is not mysticism. That is geometry. And it is the key to everything that follows. Part 3. The Canadian farmer who grew miracles. If a cardboard pyramid could restore the edge of steel, what would happen if someone built that same shape, full size, over a garden? In the early 1970s, a Canadian farmer named Les Brown decided to find out. Brown built a wooden pyramid greenhouse on his farm, 16 feet on each side at the base, 11 feet tall, sloped at exactly 51 degrees, matching the Great Pyramid. There is an important detail here that most people rush past. Brown was not a hobbyist. He was a working farmer with decades of experience. He knew what normal production looked like, and what happened inside that pyramid was not normal. Cucumbers grew several inches in a single night. Tomato plants fruited at a pace he had never seen before. By his estimates, the pyramid produced roughly 36 times more food per square foot than any conventional growing space he had used. But it was not just volume. The quality was different. Less insect damage, richer flavor, healthier-looking plants overall. And then Brown noticed something he was not expecting at all. He placed fresh food inside the pyramid, bananas, meat, milk, just to see what would happen. The food did not rot, it dehydrated. Bananas stayed edible for weeks. Meat dried into clean jerky without spoiling. Milk did not sour. A hollow geometric frame, no refrigeration, no preservatives, no power source, was actively slowing bacterial decomposition. That is not a spiritual claim. That is a measurable electromagnetic effect on microbial activity happening inside a shape. Brown published his findings and shared his exact dimensions freely.
So anyone can
He
replicate the
believed
structure
everyone
for
deserved
themselves.
access to this. Part 4. Copper, the Earth's natural antenna. Les Brown worked with wood. The results were extraordinary. But the real breakthrough comes when that same geometry is built with copper. Here is something worth understanding about this metal. Copper is the second most electrically conductive metal on Earth, 59 million Siemens per meter, second only to silver. It is also paramagnetic, meaning it responds to magnetic fields and has the ability to amplify them. Every electromagnetic coil, every transformer, every antenna ever built relies on copper for exactly these properties. Now, take that copper and bend it into a pyramid at the golden ratio angle. It stops being a piece of plumbing pipe. It becomes a three-dimensional antenna. The four triangular faces act as receiving surfaces. The apex focuses energy downward. The interior becomes a resonant cavity where electromagnetic waves concentrate. No moving parts, no batteries, no maintenance, no expiration date. This is where the Belgian experiment from the opening comes back into the picture. In 2011, agronomist Yannick van Doorn placed seed potatoes under a copper pyramid for just 2 days before planting. Same soil, same water, same batch of seeds. The treated plants showed double the growth and double the yield compared to the controls. That experiment has been repeated by independent gardeners across the world, and the pattern holds. Part 5. The global suppression of the permanent solution. At this point, a reasonable question comes up, and it deserves a straight answer. If this technology is cheap, effective, and simple, why is it not taught in every agricultural program in the country? The timeline tells the story. In 1918, the British Electroculture Committee was established under the Ministry of Agriculture. It was staffed with leading scientists, including Nobel laureates. For nearly 2 decades, they documented substantial crop yield improvements from electrical methods applied to farmland. Then, in 1936, the committee was dissolved without public explanation. Every report they had produced was stamped "not for publication" and locked away in government archives. Academic citations for electroculture dropped by over 90% in the following decades. Here is the financial context. In 1945, American farmers spent $300 million on synthetic fertilizers. By 1975, that number had exploded past $3 billion. Today, the global fertilizer industry is worth over $200 billion a year. The pesticide market adds another $60 billion on top. Both industries run on repeat purchases. A bag of fertilizer needs to be bought again every spring. A copper frame built once from hardware store materials and never replaced? That has no revenue model for anyone selling chemicals. No grand conspiracy theory is needed to explain what happened. The free market simply rewarded the consumable product over the permanent solution. And a generation of gardeners grew up never hearing about electroculture at all. But physics does not expire because a committee was shut down. The atmospheric electric field is still there.
And on
The golden
essentials
ratio still
intact.
works.
A close
and copper
view of
still
weathered
conducts.
copper conducting skyward. The Giza-like slope.
Part 6. Building your own electric soil system. Here is the practical section, the part that turns this from history into something that can be built this weekend. There are 3 layers to this system. Each one works independently, but together they create something greater than the sum of the parts. Layer 1. The copper pyramid seed energizer. The materials are simple. Half-inch Type M pure copper pipe from any plumbing supply store. Not galvanized steel. Not PVC wrapped in copper tape. Not painted iron. Pure copper, that is non-negotiable. The critical ratio. Edge length equals base length multiplied by 0.952. For a 12-inch base pyramid, the 4 edges rising to the apex must be 11.42 inches long. Connect the base pieces into a square using 90-degree copper elbows. Join the 4 rising edges at the top. Now, here is the single most common mistake, and it is the reason most beginners get no results and give up. Orientation. One flat side of the base must face true magnetic north, not approximate north, not sort of northish. True north, checked with a compass. Without this alignment, the geometry sits completely inert. With it, the interaction with the Earth's magnetic field begins. Place seeds on a non-metallic surface, wood or cardboard, inside the pyramid at roughly 1/3 of the total height from the base. Leave them for 2 to 3 days before planting. A simple bonus: place a watering can inside the pyramid for 48 hours. That treated water has been shown to produce noticeably faster germination. Layer 2. The garden bed pyramid. For a standard 4-foot raised bed, build a copper frame with a 4-foot base per side. Edge pieces should measure 3 feet and 9.5 inches. Using thicker 3/4 inch or 1 inch pipe for stability. Place this open frame directly over the bed. One flat side facing true north. The sides do not need glass or plastic enclosure. The open copper frame alone, at the correct angle, produces the documented effects. Layer 3. The galvanic earth battery. This is the most advanced step and the most rewarding. It turns the soil itself into a living, self-feeding electrical system. Start by digging a trench 2 feet deep beneath the garden bed. Line the bottom with the largest logs and branches of untreated hardwood available. Oak, maple, apple, cherry. Avoid pressure-treated lumber and black walnut. As this wood slowly decomposes, it becomes both a water reservoir and a microbial fuel cell. The microorganisms breaking down the wood generate actual electrical electrons directly into the surrounding soil. Next comes the critical layer, charged biochar. Biochar is a highly porous, carbon-rich charcoal with a staggering internal surface area, up to 9,000 square feet in a single gram. But fresh biochar is chemically hungry. It must be charged first by soaking it for 48 hours in compost tea or dissolved worm castings. This loads it with beneficial microbes and nutrients. Spread a 4 to 6 inch layer of charged biochar over the logs. Here is what makes biochar unique in this system. Its aromatic carbon structure is electrically conductive. It functions as permanent wiring inside the soil, carrying the atmospheric charge collected by the copper pyramid above directly down into the root zone. And unlike organic matter, biochar does not decompose. It remains functional for hundreds of years. Cover everything with 6 to 8 inches of rich garden soil. Now, the final detail. Beside each plant, insert a 6-inch piece of copper pipe into the soil on one side and a galvanized zinc nail on the other, about 8 to 12 inches apart. The biochar-enriched soil acts as an electrolyte between these 2 different metals, creating a mild galvanic reaction. Press a digital multimeter to the copper and zinc. The reading will show between 0.8 and 1.1 volts of real, measurable electricity. That gentle current does 2 things. First, it mobilizes locked nutrients in the soil through a process similar to electrolysis. Second, the plant roots actually grow toward the copper, a documented biological response called electrotropism. Meanwhile, The zinc slowly releases zinc ions, which plants need to produce auxin, their master growth hormone. The full system together. When the true north-facing copper pyramid sits over a biochar-enriched galvanic soil bed, 4 layers of energy converge. From above, the copper pyramid collects and focuses atmospheric electromagnetic energy downward. From below, the decomposing hardwood generates biological heat and electrons that radiate upward. In the middle, the copper-zinc battery mobilizes soil nutrients. Threading it all together, the conductive biochar acts as permanent wiring, connecting the sky to the earth through the root zone. No plug, no subscription, no seasonal repurchase.
The camera settles low at root height, looking through the open copper frame toward a thriving plant above dark living soil.
Part 7. Harvesting wisdom for the present day. The ancient Egyptians aligned their pyramids to true north with an accuracy of 1/15 of a degree. They encoded the 2 most fundamental mathematical constants in the universe, pi and phi, into the slope of stone. That same proportion, that same geometry, is available at any hardware store for the price of a few feet of copper pipe and a tube of solder. Electroculture is not just a gardening method. It is a different way of thinking about what a garden actually is. It says that energy is not something that has to be purchased in a bag every spring. Energy is already here, in the electric field of the atmosphere, in the magnetic pulse of the earth, in the spiral mathematics of every living thing, and in the dark, conductive carbon of a charred piece of wood buried 2 feet underground. A copper pyramid does not wear out. Over time, it develops a green patina, a layer of copper carbonate that actually protects the metal from further corrosion. That frame can last for centuries. The biochar buried today will still be holding water and hosting microbial life long after the person who buried it is gone. This is not a seasonal fix. It is a permanent investment in the ground, the kind of thing that gets passed down, not thrown away. The proof is not hidden. It is encoded in the geometry of a seashell, the spiral of a galaxy, and the angle of the oldest standing structure on Earth. The only test that matters is the one waiting in the quiet soil, just outside the back door. If this story changed the way a simple piece of copper pipe looks, if it sparked even one new idea, share it with someone who grows things. The fastest way to bring forgotten science back to life is to plant it in every garden on the street. Thank you for watching. If this kind of content feels valuable, subscribe so the next one finds its way to you. Keep your hands in the soil and let the earth do what it has always known how to do.
Happy gardening.